soldiers, basically the two of them, explain they've been attacked by a horde of Highlanders. When they're asked how many men in the one horde, one, but he was really big and scary, honestly. Now, you work out from the description, it was Wallace that killed the English sergeant. Now, Wallace isn't in his village. He's hiding up in the hills. He's no daft. Now, after a couple of weeks, he makes his way back down to his village. There's a lot more English soldiers than normal, and they start following him around. Now, one of them are like, look, William, they are here for you. Leg it. Now, leg it is Scots slang. It means to run away from someone very quickly in authority. So if you're out and you hear a bunch of youths going, quick, leg it, it's the police. That means quick, run away quickly, here comes the police. Now, Wallace is running through his village. He hears a lady's voice. It's Marion. Now, Wallace and Marion hide in Marion's house. They barricade the doors shut. Wallace sneaks out through the thatched roof, back off up into the hills. Now, the English work out Marion helped Wallace escape. She's taken prisoner, charged with treason. Now, the Sheriff of Lanark. Basically, the reason Wallace was wanted for treason, the sergeant was the nephew of the Sheriff of Lanark. Sends out a proclamation, Wallace, you've got 1 week to turn yourself in, or Marion will be executed. Now, back then there was no mobile phone, no WhatsApp, no Instagram, no hashtag I've got your lady friend. Wallace doesn't find out. Now, true to his word, basically, after a week goes by, the sheriff drags Marion to the centre of the village and executes her by slitting her throat from ear to ear. Now, you can imagine Wallace isn't happy about this. He's on his way down to Lanark to kill the Sheriff of Lanark. Now, he's approached by about 100 local men. William, we didn't think you should kill the sheriff. William's like, why? The beep. I can't tell you what he said. Should I no kill the sheriff? They're like, whoa, wait. Calm down. Keep the heat. It means keep a level head. We didn't think you should kill the sheriff without us. So Wallace and his band of merry men head down to Lanark. The men kill all the English soldiers. Wallace captures the Sheriff of Lanark, drags him to the centre of the village, and skins him alive to leave him to die screaming in the centre of the village. Now, excuse me for a sec. After that, Wallace and his band of men are really wanted for treason. But over the next year, Wallace's band of men swells to about 1,000 men. Guerrilla tactics against the English, hit and run. This comes to the attention of Andy Murray, not the tennis player, the Highland Lord, Andrew de Moray. Comes out of the Scottish Highlands with 7,000 Highland warriors. Big, bearded Scotsman. Dubious personal hygiene. Now, this is a full-on rebellion. This comes to the attention of Edward I. Now, Edward sends message to Hugh de Cressingham, the commander of the forces at Stirling Castle. Get out there and crush these rebellious Scots. Now, we've got a very beautiful glen. That means a valley in Scots to our right. So, as I say, Hugh de Cressingham, not a military man. Hitler's military men there. So, September 1297, Wallace and Murray are camped up at Abbey Craig, where the Wallace Monument is. Hugh de Cressingham and the English are camped at Stirling Castle. About 13,500 English, about 7,500 Scots. Now, the Scots let about half of the English army cross. They come charging down from Abbey Craig, capture Stirling Bridge, that the English will cross with maybe 50 men at a time, no more than 20 horses, to stop more of the English crossing. They force the English down into an oxbow. That's where the river loops back on itself. This is an absolute massacre. Now, during the battle, Stirling Bridge collapses. Some people think just too many men on the bridge. Some people think Wallace and Murray weakened the bridge to trap the English. Some people think Hugh de Cressingham weakened the bridge to trap the Scots. We don't know. All we know is more of them, more of the English drown. This is a massive victory for Scotland over England. The Scots capture Stirling Castle, the most important castle in Scotland, from the English. Wallace captures Hugh de Cressingham, drags him down to the kitchen of Stirling Castle and ties him to the kitchen table. He then proceeds to skin him alive. He takes a 2-inch strip of skin in one go, from the back of his head, down his neck, down his back, across his backside, all the way to the bottom of his left leg. He has that skin made into leather and turned into a sword belt and scabbard to carry his broadsword into battle against the English. He's still not finished. Hugh de Cressingham is lying, screaming in agony, on Stirling Castle, skinless from head to toe. Wallace heads to the kitchen supplies, picks up a barrel of salt, and tips a barrel of salt across the skinless Hugh de Cressingham. I'll just let that sink in for a moment. A bit like Wallace did to Hugh de Cressingham. Now, Hugh de Cressingham is thankfully dead. Now, what Wallace does, he takes the rest of the skin of Hugh de Cressingham, has it made into leather, cut into small squares, embossed with a picture of Stirling Bridge. He gives a piece of the skin of his enemy to every one of his men that fought from at the Battle of Stirling Bridge. Now, I know some of you are probably looking for some souvenir here of Scotland from your time in Scotland. Maybe something not as bloody as the skin of your enemy, but whatever floats your boat. No judgment here. Now, after this, Wallace and Murray are named guardians, protectors of Scotland, charged with driving Wallace out. Not driving Wallace out, charged with driving the English out. Now, Andrew de Murray is a guardian of Scotland until December 1297, when he dies of his wounds he received at the Battle of Stirling Bridge, leaving Wallace in charge of the army on his own. Now, Edward I is furious. He comes up to Scotland, catches Wallace unprepared for battle. June 1298, the Battle of Falkirk. Surrounds the Scots with a massive army. Wallace cannot flee. The Scots lose 2/3 of the army. Wallace resigns as Guardian of Scotland, flees Scotland to France, Italy, Spain for the next 8 years, trying to raise an army to fight for Scottish independence. But nothing happens. Now, in 1305, Wallace gets a message from the Lord de Menteith. William, there's a massive army waiting at you for Rob Royston, the west coast of Scotland. Basically, we just need you to come back. Wallace thinks, brilliant, here we go. Now, when Wallace makes it back to Scotland, there is an army waiting for him. It's an English, not a Scottish army. The Lord de Menteith, not Robert the Bruce, betrayed Wallace to the English. Bruce and Wallace were friends. Don't know why Mel Gibson made him look like the bad guy in Braveheart. Now, Wallace is taken down to London, put on trial. Murder, treason, murder, I'll give you that, maybe skinned a few people alive. Treason, oh no. Treason is against your monarch or your country. Wallace points out he fights for Scotland, not against it. John Balliol, not Edward, is his king. It doesn't matter. Sentenced to die. On his day of execution, they drag him from his cell. They strip him naked. They tie his hands behind his back. They tie his feet to a long rope attached to a horse. The horse drags Wallace for 5 miles through the rock, the dirt, the filth of London. Now, after 5 miles, they cut him down from the rope attached to his feet. They put a noose around his neck and they slowly hang him. They drag him to a height of 16 feet above the ground. But they're not trying to kill him. They wait until he's almost unconscious and they drop him back to the ground, shattering bones in his arms and his legs. He cannot catch his fall. They do this 3 times. Wallace is still alive and conscious. After that, they cut him down. He crashes to the ground for the 3rd time. They drag him over and attach a rope to each of his wrists and his ankles. These attach these ropes to 4 horses and get these 4 horses to walk in 4 opposite directions, called stretching, dislocating his joints, ripping his tendons and muscles, all while Wallace is alive and conscious. After that, they drag him over to an oak log. They tie him down with his head facing a fire, white hot coals, a red hot knife. They emasculate and they castrate him. They literally cut off everything down there, throw it in the fire. He has to watch and smell his own flesh burning. It's a sign that his lineage ends with him. Now, they take this red hot knife and open him from throat to the wound in the groin, pulling back the skin, breaking his ribs, all while Wallace is alive and conscious. First thing out onto the fire, lower intestines, upper intestines, kidneys, liver, spleen. This is in front of 30,000 men, women and children screaming for blood. This was your sport, your television, your X Factor of the time. They reckon Wallace did not die until they cut his still beating heart from his chest and held it up for the crowd to see. They're still not finished. They cut off his head, dip it in tar, and place it a spike on Traitor's Gate at the Tower of London. They rip his body into 4 pieces and send those 4 pieces on a tour around Scotland as a warning to us Scots not to rise up against the English, or this is what will happen. William Wallace was 35 years old when he died in August 1305. He was the first person ever to be hung, drawn and quartered with his head on Traitor's Gate. If you ever hear someone was hung, drawn and quartered, basically that's what happened to them. Now that leads on until 1306 to Robert the Bruce, Robert the First, seen as many as the greatest king of Scotland. But that's a bit of history for Friday on the way back down the road.